Eh. Today we're talking Catcher in the Rye, chapter 21, 22, and 23. So at the end of yesterday's reading, Holden had been gone to Central Park by himself when he had gotten really drunk at the music club, and he broke the record that he was bringing back for Phoebe. And he investigated and found the ducks weren't there, and he threw the rest of his money into the pond, skipping it across. Then he decided to go back to his family's apartment, and luckily his parents were gone. And he sneaks in and a lot of this book is about um, growing up, right? And um, Holden, like you, is not really an adult and is not quite a kid, and they're somewhere in the middle. And he worries about that a lot with himself, and he also worries about that a lot with younger people and kids. Um, he brings up the idea of the Catcher in the Rye in this chapter, which is what the title of the book is. And I'll show you the page of that in a little bit, but that's kind of going to set up what we're talking about here. So Holden's idea of being the Catcher in the Rye is what his dream is, and he got this idea from hearing that little kid singing in the street, and Holden mishears it. Holden hears it is as when a body catch a body coming through the rye. What the actual line is when a body meet a body coming through the rye, and it's a much dirtier interpretation. Um, Anyway, he envisions all these kids playing tag on the top of a cliff, right? And there's kind of a plateau up there, and there's a lot of tall grass, rye, it's kind of like wheat. And because the grass is so tall, the kids can't see where they're going. And if you've ever brought a kid to the park, sometimes when they get really excited, they don't pay a great deal of attention to where they're going and can easily run into stuff and get hurt, right? So in this instance, what he's worried about is these kids running and not being able to see over the top of the grass and running excitedly, not watching where they're going and falling off the cliff, right? And what that would imply is they go from playing tag and being kids to falling off the cliff and falling or becoming an adult and phony, right? And having to go through all and worry about all the stuff that Holden's worried about, sex and popularity and his reputation and drinking and all that stuff, right? So he would be the only older person around to stop that and prevent these kids from falling. But what we see is kids don't want to be protected from this, right? And when we're in class, I would ask the question, everyone raise your hand if when you were a kid, you were excited to grow up. And I think most people usually do. But then I ask, as a teenager now, raise your hand if you're excited to grow up. And a lot fewer people raise their hands that time period. Because you know why, you know what's coming for you as an adult and the type of responsibilities you're going to have. Okay. Now, when Holden goes into the apartment, he goes and finds that Phoebe, who is a kid, is staying in DB's room because she likes the bigger room, right? And she's still at that point where the idea of growing up is exciting. Anyway, old Phoebe likes to sleep, and this is on 159 in the book and page 85 in the PDF. Anyway, old Phoebe likes to sleep in DB's room when he's away, and he lets her. You ought to see her doing her homework or something at that crazy desk. It's almost as big as the bed. You can hardly see her when she's doing her homework. That's the kind of stuff she likes, though. She doesn't like her own room because it's too little, she said. She said she likes to spread out. That kills me. What's old Phoebe got to spread out? Nothing. I went around the room, very quiet now, looking at stuff for a while. I felt swell for a change. I didn't even feel like I was getting pneumonia or anything anymore. I felt good for a change. Because he's back in this place of youth, right? He likes kids because they're authentic, right? You think about kids, they're not worried about their reputation, they're not worried about being popular, they're not worried about sex or anything to do with growing up. They just do what they want to do because they want to do it, right? And unfortunately, Holden thinks that as you go through adolescence and adulthood, you stay a phony basically until you're older, like Mr. Spencer. And when you get to the point where you're old enough, you don't care what people think either. Going on, Holden then looks through some of her notebooks and stuff and kind of reminisces about the past, and Holden spends a lot of time doing this. And then Phoebe wakes up, and they start to talk, and they talk about various things in the place she's in, and various stuff in the place she's in, and the doctor she went to see, and here we go. Then we also get some evidence that as much as she wants to grow up, right, and stay in the big room and work at the big desk, she's also a kid still. And on 164 in the book and 88 in the PDF, it said, this boy, Curtis Weintraub, pushed me down the stairs in the park. Why'd he push you down the stairs? Holden asked. I don't know. I think he hates me. This other girl and me, Selma Atterbury, put pink ink and stuff all over his windbreaker. That isn't very nice. What are you, a child, for God's sakes? This is one of the only times he uses the word child as kind of a negative term. No, but every time I'm in the park, he follows me everywhere. He's always following me. He gets on my nerves. He probably likes you. That's no reason to put ink. I don't want him to like me. Now, this could be she doesn't want him to like him because he pushed down the stairs, which generally, if someone pushes you down the stairs, you're not going to be interested in that person. But it could also be because this boy is at, you know, she's still at the place where other people have cooties, right? And she's not interested in other people in that way. Then Phoebe asks him about how he got kicked out of school, right? And she realizes that he's home early. He's home a couple days before he was supposed to, and that the reason why was because he got kicked out of school. You know, she's young, right? But she's smart and aware of what's going on. Now, he starts to talk, right? And if you're writing about the importance of communication for your paper, this would be a good section to bring in because, as we saw in the last reading, when he reached out and talked to Carl Luce, he got some good information that he would have not have gotten, and that was the advice that he should get therapy, right? And now Phoebe is going to give him some good advice too. So Holden starts talking about the problems with kids in school and the problems with school, and it's basically that people are mean there, right? Oh God, Phoebe, don't ask me that. I'm sick of everybody asking me that. A million reasons why. This is 167 in the white book and and page 90 in the PDF. A million reasons why. It was one of the worst schools I ever went to. It was full of phonies and mean guys. You never saw so many mean guys in your life. For instance, if you're having a bull session in somebody's room and somebody wanted to come in, nobody'd let them if they were some dopey, pimply guy. Everyone was always locking their doors when someone wanted to come in. And they had this secret fraternity that I was too yellow not to join. There was this one pimply, boring guy, Robert Ackley, that wanted to get in. He kept trying to join, but they wouldn't let him just because he was boring and pimply. I don't even feel like talking about it. It was a stinking school. Take my word for it. Now, Phoebe listened to him, and she might not have gotten everything because she's still younger than he is. And again, as we remember back from the opening chapter, while Holden really distinguishes himself as being cooler and more popular than Ackley, and he probably is to a degree, they were the only two that were alone in the dorms on Saturday night, right? And so my guess is that Ackley and Holden share more characteristics than Holden wants to admit. Anyway, now here's the advice that Holden gets after talking about some things. Page 169 in the white book and page 91 in the PDF. Phoebe said, "You don't like anything that's happening." It made me even more depressed when she said that. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Sure, I do. Don't say that. Why the hell do you say that? Because you don't. You don't like any schools. You don't like a million things. You don't. I do. That's where you're wrong. That's exactly where you're wrong. Why the hell do you have to say that? Boy, was she depressing me. Because you don't. She said, name one thing. One thing? One thing I like, I said, okay. The trouble was I couldn't concentrate too hard. Sometimes it's hard to concentrate. One thing I like a lot, you mean? I asked. She didn't answer me though. She was cockeyed positioned way the hell over on the other side of the bed, about 1,000 miles away. Come on, answer me. One thing I like a lot, or just one thing I like? You like a lot. Now, she goes on to talk, he says, but he couldn't think, right? And he thinks about the nuns, right? And that's one thing he likes a lot because they're authentic and they, like Mr. Spencer, do what they want to do because they think it's, in their case, it's because they think it's the right thing to do. In his case, just because he wants to do it. But then James Castle, and this fits with the idea of the Catcher in the Rye, was a kid who called another boy in the school conceited, and the conceited boy's friends all ganged up on him. And while Holden doesn't say exactly what they did to him, it was pretty bad, right? And he said it's too repulsive, is the way Holden describes it. And then the kid jumps out of the window and commits suicide. Now, this idea of the Catcher in the Rye and kids falling is definitely related to this idea of James Castle falling. But what Holden's going to realize is that he couldn't catch this kid anyway, right? I mean, physically he couldn't catch him. He couldn't run out and stop him from falling. But even if he had interfered with the other boys, he might not have been able to do that, right? And even if he stops the boys from picking on him, maybe that doesn't stop the boy from doing it, right? Growing up is difficult, right? But most people end up okay, right? Just as with the ducks, coming a winter is difficult, but most ducks end up okay. Anyway, he can't think of those things, and then it goes on page 171 and page 92. It said, "You can't even think of one thing." Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Well, do it then. I like Allie, and I like doing what I'm doing right now, sitting here with you and talking and thinking about stuff. Now, if you're writing about the importance of communication, this is good evidence, right? One, he's talking to her and she gives him the advice, not advice, but she makes the observation that he does not like anything anymore. And I think hearing that from his younger sister is much more powerful. And if he hadn't talked to her about it, he wouldn't have gotten that. And then also, he talks about the only things he really likes doing is, well, the things he really likes are his younger brother who passed away, and then also sitting and talking, right? Going on, and then Phoebe tries to talk him out of that and said, anyhow, I like it now. I mean, right now, sitting here with you and just chewing the fat and horse. This isn't anything, really. It is so something, really. It certainly is. Why the hell isn't it? People never think anything's anything, really. I'm getting sick of it. He likes talking, right? And that's because he needs to talk. Now, the Catcher in the Rye idea is coming up right here, and this is on page 93 in the PDF and 173 in the book. Now, the Catcher in the Rye, as the poem by Yeats, I think it was Yeats. Anyway, the poem is a much dirtier poem, right? So instead of when a body catch a body coming through the rye, as Holden hears it, it's when a body meet a body coming through the rye, right? And the implication of what a body does when it meets a body in the rye is they do naughty stuff, right? These two people are meeting in the rye so that they can have some privacy for their special time, right? So Holden thinks this is a poem about the protecting the innocence of children, but actually the poem or song is, if not about losing one's innocence, it's about doing not innocent things, right? Now, going on, so we'll come back to the Catcher in the Rye in the last chapter, and then he gets ready and he hangs out, and he and Phoebe talk some more, and then he hits kind of his lowest point, right? And as he's getting ready to leave, Holden has wasted all his money on booze and trying to meet women and taxi cabs and cigarettes and all kinds of stuff, and he's down to almost nothing. And he then asks if he can borrow some money from Phoebe, right? Now, Phoebe takes her Christmas money that she had saved up to buy her. I'm going to pause for a sec. And the Christmas money is on page 97 in the PDF and 179 in the book. And when he asked her, she says her Christmas money that she'd saved up to buy all her Christmas gifts. And he said, "How much is it, for God's sakes?" $8.85, 65 cents. I spent some. Then all of a sudden I started to cry. I couldn't help it. I did it so nobody can hear me, but I did it. Now, the reason he starts crying, I think he didn't start crying. That would be even weirder. One, I think everything is just kind of hitting him at once. Allie's death, getting kicked out of school. He's wasted all his money on nothing. And he's here asking his little sister for money, and this $8.85, clearly she spent a lot of time saving it up because she knew it down to the nearest dime, right? And I think he just kind of breaks down. Plus, he hasn't really slept or eaten or had much to drink other than booze, and so physically he's feeling depressed and terrible, and all things are not going well for him. So then he goes to a trusted friend and teacher, Mr. Antolini's, and that is it for today. Thank you.